Today is May 1st, 2021. We're studying from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. We're on text 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Someone can do response. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So this is text 25, chapter 9, canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Rama Uvacha Bhagavan Sarvabhutanam Adyaksha Avastita Guham Veda He Apratirudhena Pragyanena Chikirshitam Brahmovacha Bhagavan Sarvabhutanam Adyaksho Vastito Guham Vedaya Pratirudhena Pragyanena Chikirshitam Brahmovacha Bhagavan Sarvabhutanam Adyaksho Vastito Guham Vedaya Pratirudhena Pragyanena Chikirshitam Brahmovacha Bhagavan Sarvabhutanam Adyaksho Vastito Guham Vedaya Pratirudhena Pragyanena Chikirshitam. Would others like to recite the verse? This is text 25 of chapter 9, canto 2.
Brahmovacha
Brahmovacha
Bhagavan Sarvabhutanam Adyaksho
Vastito Guham
Vedaya Pratirudhena Pragyanena
Chikirshitam. Hare Krishna. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 25. We'll go to the word for word. Brahma Uvacha. Lord Brahma said. Bhagavan. O my Lord. Sarvabhutanam.
Sarva Bhutanam,
of all living entities.
of all living entities.
Adyaksha,
Adyaksha,
director.
Director.
Avastita,
Avastita,
situated.
situated.
Guham,
Guham,
within the heart.
within the heart.
Veda,
Veda,
no.
no.
He,
He,
certainly.
certainly.
Apratirudhena,
Pratirudena,
without hindrance.
without hindrance.
Pragyanena,
Prajnanena,
by super intelligence.
by super intelligence.
Jikirshitam,
Kirshitam,
endeavors.
endeavors.
Translation. Lord Brahma said, O personality of Godhead, you are situated in every living entity's heart as the supreme director, and therefore you are aware of all endeavors by your superior intelligence without any hindrance whatsoever. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart as the witness, and as such, He is the supreme director of sanction. The director is not the enjoyer of the fruits of action, for without the Lord's sanction, no one can enjoy. For example, in a prohibited area, a habituated drunkard puts forward his application to the director of drinking, and the director, considering his case, sanctions only a certain amount of liquor for drinking. Similarly, the whole material world is full of many drunkards, in the sense that each and every one of the living entities has something in his mind to enjoy, and everyone desires the fulfillment of his desires very strongly. The Almighty Lord, being very kind to the living entity, as the Father is kind to the Son, fulfills the living entity's desire for his childish satisfaction. With such desires in mind, the living entity does not actually enjoy, but he serves the bodily whims unnecessarily, without profit. The drunkard does not derive any profit out of drinking, but because he has become a servant of the drinking habit and does not wish to get out of it, the merciful Lord gives him all facilities to fulfill such desires. The impersonalists recommend that one should become desireless, and others recommend banishing desires altogether. That is impossible. No one can banish desires altogether because desiring is the living symptom. Without having desires, a living entity would be dead, which he is not. I feel like reading that sentence again. Without having desires, a living entity would be dead, which he is not. Therefore, living conditions and desire go together. Perfection of desires may be achieved when one desires to serve the Lord, and the Lord also desires that every living entity banish all personal desires and cooperate with his desires. That is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaji agreed to this proposal, and therefore he is given the responsible post of creating generations in the vacant universe. Oneness with the Lord, therefore, consists of dovetailing one's desires with the desires of the Supreme Lord. That makes for the perfection of all desires. The Lord, as the super soul in the heart of every living being, knows what is in the mind of each living entity, and no one can do anything without the knowledge of the Lord within. By his superior intelligence, the Lord gives everyone the chance to fulfill his desires to the fullest extent, and the resultant reaction is also awarded by the Lord. I'm going to close the window here to create some sound protection. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini Rayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamutirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Pray Shvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version, Text 25. Brahmovacha Bhagavan Sarva Bhutanam Adyaksho Vastito Guham Vedayap Pratirudhena Praganena Chikirshitam. Lord Brahma said, O personality of Godhead, you are situated in every living entity's heart as the supreme director, and therefore you are aware of all endeavors by your superior intelligence without any hindrance whatsoever. Okay, so Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he makes it clear that we are all drunkards. Yes. Yes, so Srila Prabhupada makes it clear here. He's giving this analogy, but it's not really an analogy. So the idea is, for example, in a prohibited area, a habituated drunkard puts forward his application to the director of drinking, and the director, considering his case, sanctions only a certain amount of liquor for drinking. Similarly, the whole material world is full of many drunkards in the sense that each and every one of the living entities has something in his mind to enjoy, and everyone desires the fulfillment of his desires very strongly. So, okay, so the direct example is one who's addicted to drinking alcohol. Okay, you know, a leader in the field of addiction treatment is Gabor Mate, and he wrote a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and actually he's read Relationships That Work, and I have had some connection with him, and actually he appreciated the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So anyhow, he's a physician in the in the ghetto neighborhoods of Vancouver, and he did a lot of work with addictions. And in the realm of hungry ghosts, that's a term that comes from Buddhism. In the realm of hungry ghosts, it's the ghostly realm. It's a realm of addiction. It's the realm of when the lower self takes control. And so his thesis in his book is that we're all addicted. We're all addicted. Now, there could be some who are addicted to crack cocaine or heroin or whatever it is. And so what he's saying is fully consistent with the Vedic understanding and our own experience, right? So addictions where kind of like we know because we've given power to our lower self. Evambude prambudva samstabhyamanamamana jahishatru mahabaho kamarupam darasadam. Krishna says for progress and self-realization, control the lower self with the higher self by spiritual intelligence. And that way we can control the insatiable enemy known as lust. So real freedom. So actual freedom is the capacity to commit to our highest good. So in those areas of my addiction, I'm not able to commit to my highest good, because whether it's the drinking habit or the internet habit or the spending money unnecessarily habit or the oversleeping or overeating or the losing control of my temper, whatever habit it is, it has control of me. And so I can say I'm free and like that, but actually I'm not free to commit to my highest good. So we could all, unless we're fully liberated, pure devotee souls, we can all look at where are our addictions? Where are our addictions? Where are we escaping? What's the manifestation of our escape? Some quote, there's no bad habit other than the habit to escape. Meaning that if whatever the addictions, here Prabhupada's talking about drinking, alcoholism, whatever the addiction, we're trying to avoid pain. We're trying to escape from the responsibility of life, from being with ourselves, and allowing that experience of the pain to move us to realization of what it means to be a spiritual entity, to, as Prabhupada says, with such desires in mind, the living entity does not actually enjoy, but he serves the bodily whims unnecessarily without profit. Okay, so let the pain and the shame of material existence and those addictions, so rather than trying to numb them through a different escape, we experience them, and then that can move us towards, okay, let me give myself to my actual best interest, my actual artha, prema pum arto mahan, to my actual best interest, to self-realization, to serving Krishna with love and devotion. And because this body is really a bad bargain, and let me get that. But if I'm spending my life indulging my numbing addictions, then I won't get that. And then we won't get the realization that'll move us to Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param, to intensity for spiritual life. So, So Prabhupada talks about drinking, the habituated drunkard. It's text 25 of chapter 9, canto 2, Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he puts that he's giving the analogy. He's giving the analogy that the government will give some regulation. So So regulation means it's not good. Okay. Regulation, okay, the example here is drinking alcohol. So we can see in any kind of spiritual literature, Bible, Quran, Vedas, like that. The idea is, okay, well, if you want to drink, then do it in these circumstances, in these conditions, only this much, right? In maximum of this amount at this time. Same with meat eating. Okay, the idea is the best, just like in the first verse of the Bible, in the first chapter of the Bible, God makes it very clear. Look, ideal diet for human beings is vegetarian. That's ideal. Okay, but then as the Bible goes on, all right, if you're not able to do that, then there's a commandment. There's a commandment. At least don't chop off the leg of some animal and just start chomping on the leg. So what's it mean? It means God was speaking to people who was chopping off the legs of animals and just letting them suffer in pain like that. And then as the Bible goes on, there are the laws of kosher, kashrut, right? And so if we're simply committed to eat prashad, we're automatically kosher, good Jews following the commandments. Yeah. So, right. So, so the idea is given it to be an ideal vegetarian, okay? And the same in Quran and same in the Vedas. And the Vedas go, okay, but if you can't follow that, at least regulate it. So regulation means ideally don't do any, but if you need to regulate, okay, just like, okay, like for say chanting the names of God, we also have a regulation, right? Like my commitment for about 38 years is I'll chant at least 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra japa per day, right? So that's a regulation of I'll do this minimum, okay? Or like we might have our pacts, like I'll come to morning program at least 2 days a week or something, okay, right? So that's a regulation for a minimum, because those are things that we can't do too much of it, okay? So like if we look at any genuine spiritual literature, it'll recommend chant the names of God, but it's never, but not too much, right? Or read spiritual literature, but only on Saturdays and definitely not on Tuesdays, once a month, no, right? So these are things that there's just unlimited goodness. So there's no limit. So because we're conditioned souls, we might make a regulation to at least do some minimum, because conditioned souls means, well, I'm more addicted to drink, well, I'm more attracted to drink alcohol and have illicit sex and gamble and eat dead animals and things than I am to the things that are really good for my soul, like chanting the names of God and rising early and reading spiritual literatures and things like that. Okay, so yeah. So for the things that are really good for the soul, then there's no limit, and then to progress, then we make some pact, so we make some commitment to like at least do a minimum, and then so there's yama and niyama, right? There's the positive and the negative, and then to progress in realizing who we are as spiritual beings, developing our love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a devotional service attitude, to progress, then we also make some maximum limit. Okay, these things that are my lower self indulgences, all right, let me make some plan that I'll indulge in them less today than yesterday, less this year than last year. So Prabhupada gives us the regulative principles. regular principles of freedom, not regular principles of repression. We heard from Anandini yesterday in Anandini's class about penance, tapas. Yesterday's verse, in all 4 lines of the Sanskrit, there's the word tapa, austerity or penance, right? And so it means to give up some immediate gratification for eternal bliss. So as we often emphasize, as Prabhupada often emphasizes, everyone's doing austerity. And so it's intrinsically, distinctively, unavoidably human to do austerity, give up some immediate goal for some longer term goal. And our special opportunity in the human form is to do austerity, not just for some long-term goal, like next week or next year, or then my business will be successful in 10 years. We might also do that. But to tapo divyam putraki inasatvam shudya dyasma brahmasokyam tranantam. That's a verse spoken by Lord Rishabhadev to his 100 sons, headed by Maharaj Bharat. The verse starts, Mayam dehu deham bhajan viloke kastan kamam arde vid bhujamye. He says, look, as human beings, don't settle for the level of enjoyment that is accepted by the stool eaters, by pigs and dogs, like that. No, in the human form of life, we get to cultivate by doing austerities directed for truly divine purposes. And how to do that, that's what Bhagavatam, that's what Bhagavad Gita is about. By doing, we get to cultivate ever expanding eternal bliss of the soul, the actual bliss of the soul, which is not relative, it's not compared, it's not based on envy, it's not based on simply relief of misery. And so, so Prabhupada describes with the living entity does not actually enjoy, the drunkard does not derive any profit out of drinking, but because he has become a servant of the drinking habit and does not wish to get out of it, the merciful Lord gives him all facilities to fulfill such desires. So, so this means like using our intelligence to see, okay, what is real happiness and what is just a shadow? Prabhupada sometimes gives the example of like a pig could be in mud and stool and wallowing and could be having sex with its relatives, and we think, oh, what kind of existence is that? But the pig is like, oh, this is very happy. This is very happy. So similarly, like we can look at our material enjoyments and we think, well, this is very sophisticated, very cultured. But if they're enjoyments that are not intrinsic to the soul proper, the soul connected with the Supreme Soul, then it's like a pig wallowing in mud. And that's the vision of the Paramahamsa for those entities who are experiencing that Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipatam Punam Vitash Vadanam Sarvatma Stampanam Pratipatam Putam Vitash Vadanam, that ever expanding spiritual bliss. In Bhagavad Gita, because we talked about regulation, so in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes about balance and regulation. Yukta hara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta svapna vabodasya, yoga bhavati dukkha. So Krishna says to progress in this path of bhakti yoga, it's vital that we're balanced. We're balanced in our habits of eating, sleeping, not sleep too much, not sleep too little, not eat too much, not eat too little, recreation, work. So balance, not extremism, right? Because if we're sleeping too much, then we're dull-minded and we're not focusing in on the higher values of life. And if we're sleeping too little because we're doing some over austerity, then also my mind's not sharp. Same with eating, recreation. Now, sometimes there's some philosophies, the idea is, yes, in everything, there's balance, right? But that could be misused in a rationalization sort of way, right? Because like the way to go is the middle path. And no, in some respects, let's call it the balanced approach is the extreme 100%. For example, we say, no, in everything, no, the middle path, that's the real wise path. Like, okay, yeah, we don't want to shoot up heroin every day. But you're saying like you never shoot up heroin? Like never? That's really imbalanced. That's really imbalanced. Get where I'm going with this? No. The proper balance in regard to such intoxicating substance, the proper balance if I want to advance in spiritual life is no, the proper temperate balance there is absolute zero. Absolute zero. Same, I could say, it's like, okay, well, I want to be balanced because that's spiritual. So then, yeah, so I don't want to go to McDonald's to eat hamburgers every day, but like to never go to McDonald's and eat, that's really fanatic. Okay, just because these things come up in the mind or in different points of view. So through common sense and guidance, we can see, so that as we develop a taste, then we just give up lower tastes completely. Prabhupada references, well, there's many places in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says he is in the heart of all living entities. Ishvara sarvabhutana videsher junatishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya. So he says, I'm situated in the hearts of all living entities who are like riding as if on a machine made of the material energy. Yantra means machine. Yantra rudani mayaya. And so, so the machine that's made of the modes, the ropes of material energy. And it's just like, yeah. And so just like, let's say in a state. So if we're, the metaphor of the state. So if we're under the control, if we're under the control of the police department, well, that's because we've decided not to abide by the laws. We decided to violate the rights of others. We're violating the rights of others. We're doing harm. And then we're under the control of the police. We're under the control of Durga. Durga, Kali. This is the goddess who's the warden of the prison house of material existence. Sri Shti Shtiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Reka Shayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Bibarti Durga Ichanarupam Apiyasya Chatesta Tesa Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. And she serves at the pleasure of Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she is fierce, but she's not bad. She's actually a pure devotee, just like the warden of the prison house is a dear servant to the government, just as the director of the university. And she's in charge of conditioned souls like us. And so when we use our free will, Krishna, this is a key point, right? So Krishna speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita and he says, and he says to Arjuna, now do as you wish to do. Krishna not saying, I don't care what you do. Krishna is so much loving Arjuna, wanting him to choose wisely. Krishna is loving us, wanting us to choose wisely, but no force. Once there's force, there's no love. Love means I voluntarily choose to serve. I voluntarily choose to serve anybody. Once there's force, we know, like once there's any control in any relationship, right? It's like, I need to control you because I love you so much. Okay, right? No, we know. Well, that's not love. That's just my need to control. So even if anyone could control a thing, it would be Krishna. But he says to Arjuna, "Do as you wish to do." And so we get to choose to continue to nourish our addictions, our lower self addictions, or we can choose our true highest good, serving God with love and devotion. And this process, these literatures, these are manuals of how to regulate our lives, like a manual, how to regulate our human form of life to to um, um, to advance towards the actual liberation of the soul from material misery. So that requires cultivating Vishaya Vinivartate Nirhavasiddhena Masuvajamsopyasya Paramjushta Nivartate, means cultivating the higher taste through reading Bhagavatam, having discussions like this, chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa, with well, in any way, with or without commitment. And with commitment means that we're taking a stand. I'm going to control my mind to do anything in spiritual life. Means we're taking it. To do it with commitment means like Yami Navyatiyante Pusham Pushar Shabbat. Samaduka Sukam Dhira Somitat Kapade. Krishna says, one who is steady in happiness and distress, and was not disturbed by either, is eligible for liberation. Meaning materially, material mind, material body, material ego, sometimes happy, sometimes distress, but whatever. I'm not going to let that, I'm not going to let that deviate me. I'm going to continue steadily on my spiritual practice. And without commitment, then I'm not going to get, and it's like, I'm happy. Why do I need to do spiritual discipline? I'm doing great. And so we'll get distracted by elation. And then if it's distress, like then we're too depressed to do spirit, or anyhow, this doesn't work, or like that. So we can use commitment as a tool, just like in any area, career, finances, communication, and similarly in spiritual practice. Cultivate the higher taste, and we can discipline ourselves to whatever extent we choose to give up lower tastes. And so to get out of the control of the police and the prison guards, it means that we choose, I'm going to be a law-abiding citizen. I'm going to be a law-abiding citizen. And so, tasmat kaleshu mamunush mariyudyacha. So the material world, material existence means fighting. It means struggle. Okay. M. Scott Peck starts his well-known book, The Road Less Traveled, with the 3 words, life is difficult. Okay. And to the extent that we resist that, like, no, it's a beautiful world for you and me. Life is difficult. And he says that once we accept that life is difficult, then it no longer matters. We resist, and he's a psychiatrist. He wrote this book 45 years ago. So resisting that life is difficult, and difficult can mean like, yeah, this is kind of disturbing, or difficult can mean like a tragic nightmare difficulty. Right? It's a whole continuum. Is that we resist that life is difficult. That's what the neuroses and the psychoses are made of. Resisting sorrows, resisting that life is difficult. Accept that nature of material world is difficult. In some of our courses, we divide the difficulties into 16 categories. Difficulties coming from our own mind and body. Difficulties coming from birth, death, old age, disease, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Difficulties coming from my propensity to cheat you. Your propensity to cheat me. Like, what? Me cheat? Okay. So, yeah, so accepting means that, okay, yeah, okay. So now this context of accept the context, that becomes a platform to live purposefully, and to give up the futile hope that by just reforming and fixing the difficulties that are present today, then I'll be happy and you'll be happy and fulfilled. No, the nature of material life it's a struggle. And Okay, so one endeavoring in devotional service is also struggling with this. Yeah, I mean, I'm in this body. I'm like 60 years. Technically speaking, in this body, I'm just one moment, right? Because the body's changing every moment. But as a matter of speech, we can say I'm in this body called David Wolf for 60 years. But if we want to get more minutely philosophical, I haven't been in this body. It's a different body now than when I started speaking 25 minutes ago. Depends how how detailed we want to get. So I haven't met anyone who's not struggling. Everyone's struggling. That's the nature of material existence. So the question is, what's a worthwhile struggle? What's a worthwhile struggle? And so my experience is struggling for Krishna consciousness, struggling to serve Srila Prabhupada. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. And that's a fulfilling, worthwhile struggle. In my experience, that's the distinction. And that's also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Like, yeah. So, because we're spiritual sparks. I read that sentence twice in the purport because I really like how Prabhupada worded it. And so, Prabhupada writes that, okay, Prabhupada writes, that is impossible. No one can banish desires altogether because desiring is the living symptom. Without having desires, a living entity would be dead, which he is not. Without having desires, a living entity, so the term living entity means living. The living entity would be dead, which he is not. So we're not dead. Okay. And we're eternally living spirit souls. And life means desire. Life means desire. So we're going to desire. And desires, and Prabhupada's indicating here, there are some philosophies where the idea is just because if you notice, if we're a little conscious, we see my desires get me into trouble, sometimes big trouble, embarrassing trouble, okay? Painful, shameful trouble. We've all experienced that. So just stop desiring. There are philosophies that will assert that. So that's a great idea. The only difficulty there is it's completely impossible. 100% impossible. Our nature's desire. So bhakti yoga is special. It's not about elimination. It's not artificial. It's about transforming the quality of desire. Transforming the quality of our desire from material to spiritual. It's not about banishing, eliminating, or pretending desires are not there. The nature of life is to desire, and that's originally, intrinsically, a beautiful, wonderful thing. It's like sparks in a fire. Sparks in a fire. So if a spark is separated from the fire, then it's extinguished. So when we're separated, now in a sense, we're never disconnected from Krishna, from God, but we forget that we're connected, and that's like being extinguished. The analogy is not complete though, because whereas a spark can be completely extinguished, the spirit soul, the life of the spirit soul is never completely extinguished. Our life is always there. Prabhupada gives the example, like a spark that leaves the fire and lands on water. That's like mode of ignorance, apparently completely extinguished. A spark that leaves the fire and lands on earth, that's like rajas, mode of passion. You can still see some spark. And a spark that leaves the fire but is landing on grass, okay, it's going to blaze up again. It's going to blaze up again. That's like mode of goodness. So this is the science this is the science for our peace, our fulfillment, all these experiences we're looking for. Cultivate the mode of goodness cultivate transcendental desires through association with personalities like Lord Brahma, Srila Prabhupada, other like-minded souls who are sincere on the path. And this is not a process about become God, right? It is a process about becoming godly, and rejuvenating that original spark of pure consciousness. And that's our actual bliss, to desire aligned with the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, taking shelter there. An analogy, just like, yeah, we're not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're not completely different than God. We have many similarities. We're spirit, God's spirit. We're eternal, God's eternal. We're not completely different, and we're not exactly the same. Just as the sun rays, they're not completely different from the sun, and they're not exactly the same as the sun glow. Yeah. So, as an analogy, it's like, say, let's say if we're in New York City at 42nd and Broadway, which is this huge intersection. And so a little child, say a 3-year-old child, if the 3-year-old child on his or her own needed to cross diagonal to the other side of 42nd and Broadway, green, yellow, red, 18-wheel trucks, 16 lanes, different directions, the child has no chance. So the child has no chance, but the child's intelligent. The child knows where to take shelter. The child's completely confident. Yes, I can cross to the other side safely, no worries. Because the child lifts his hand and takes the hand of mom or dad, and then the child is guided. The child has complete trust. So similarly, this material nature, deviyesha guna mai mama mai dhiratyaya mame vaye prapadyante maya me tam taranti te. Krishna says it's like impossible to overcome. But if you take shelter of me, we can take shelter of Krishna through Srimad Bhagavatam. We take shelter of Krishna through his pure devotee. That's like mom or dad in the analogy. Take shelter of me, you can easily cross beyond it. Etam sahastai paratmanishtam adyasitam pravatamer mahadbi aham trishyasi durantaparam tamo mukundangri nishevayeva. That's the Avanti Brahman. He says, I shall cross over the insurmountable ocean of material existence by taking shelter of Sri Krishna, the super soul in the heart. This path is approved by all the bona fide previous acharyas who have taken shelter of Sri Krishna, Paramatma, super soul. And so this is an authorized path to cross this most dangerous intersection, to cross the ocean of material existence, and we get to embrace it to whatever extent we choose. Tattvasva dharma bhajatam svam charanam pujam harer bhajana pakota patota tatet yadi. That Yatrakvava Bhajam Ambuddha Mushikim Kovarta Arto Bhajatam Swadharmata. Narada Muni asserts, and whatever progress we make on this path, there's no loss or diminution. And whatever we achieve materially, that's like castles in the sand. It's going to be washed away today, tomorrow, or 50 years, or whatever it is. So we're encouraged by these realized souls, these pure devotees, to give yourself 100%, ideally, to this path of eternal bliss and devotional service, or at least be assured that whatever we do in bhakti yoga, it's for eternal benefit. So this verse reads, Ramo vacha bhagavan sarva bhutanam adyaksho vastito guham Vedaya pratirudhena pragyanena chikirshitam. Lord Brahma said, O personality of Godhead, you are situated in every living entity's heart as the supreme director, and therefore you are aware of all endeavors by your superior intelligence without any hindrance whatsoever. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence and attention. I welcome any comments or questions. I'm reading the verse again. Brahma says, you are aware of all endeavors. So some can say, well, that means we don't have free will. But not, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaham samatitani, Vartamanani charjuna, Bhavishani chabhutani, Mamtu Vedana kaschana. He says, I know past, present, and future, and I know all living entities, but me, no one knows. And just like, okay, just like, let's say if there's a small child and we know the child really likes sweets, we go, oh, here's a sweet. And then I can predict the child's going to come to the sweet. So it's, or like that. So just because, like someone who's not as developed as us intellectually, we can predict. So similarly, we have free will, and Krishna is like at levels of intelligence, billions of quantum jumps beyond us. So he knows past, present, and future, and we have free will. It's not a contradiction. Gajendra.
Hare Krishna, good morning. Thank you for the class. If I were to comment on the parts that I like the most, it'd take me about 45 minutes. So I'll go to just to share, just a thought I was having. As you were describing some, like about things that are really not desired, or things that tend to be, regulated, even giving some really strong examples that people would agree with, like heroin and things like that. And, you talked about yama, niyama, and balance, and I appreciated all that. And it touched upon what my thought is, but I didn't hear it clearly because I see something else. And I'll say what it is. Maybe you can comment on it. But it seems like there's maybe another place that doesn't speak so strong to things that are really unhealthy or like real addictions, like I want to eat meat, so therefore there's these heavy regulations, and I'm going to take birth as this animal. That just sounds so kind of heavy and frightening. But so let's say there's just something else, like somebody is not alcoholic, that they're trying to control something with scary scriptural things or government regulations and laws. Let's just say it's more like family getting together at Passover, or saying, the Borei Pri Hagafen. And it's not like they're doing that because they all have drinking problems. Maybe they just don't even drink alcohol otherwise, but they're just literally kind of celebrating the harvest, the fruit of the vine, giving thanks to God. There are also blessings over bread and things like this. And it's really more of a place of just enjoyment, family, God-centered, as opposed to like dealing with addictions and sense control. And I don't know if you get where I'm coming from, but I just wanted to see if you have any thought about my thought.
Thanks for sharing that. What's like what you described is like very temperate, reasonable, balanced, not unhealthy. Even the example you give, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Okay, because the statistics I read, this is decades ago, like in the Jewish culture, relatively compared to other cultures, there's not a lot of alcoholism. Not that it's the only culture, but there's relatively not a lot of alcoholism. And that's because there's not like, it's not like this forbidden thing. It's not like, it's just like, oh, like even at 5 years old, you know, it's like it's on the table like that. And so it's not this like, there's not as much of when I become a teenager, then I'll have my own six pack or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that this kind of like fear and repression like that, and then there's the rebellion, and so that's it's like what you described. It's healthy. It's healthy, and just also what's coming to me in hearing you share that. Yeah, from Prabhupada. First of all, when Prabhupada came, and then you know at the center at Second Avenue, and like yeah, Prabhupada, yeah, there was nothing about don't do this, don't do that. It was have this prasadam feast that I'm cooking for you and chant and dance. In later years, Prabhupada said he thought maybe some would chant, but he's surprised that anyone agreed to follow the regulative principles. So you know the emphasis is not like don't the emphasis is festival. The emphasis is festival. Festival, spiritual festival, chant, dance, feast, chant, dance, feast, like that. And then naturally, and even studies have shown that when one gets the higher taste, then they lose their drug addiction taste and things like that. And as far as like a little wine on the Seder or something, yeah, so like it's not like destructive or like that. At the same time, even the inclination for that would naturally, you know, would just like it, even an inclination for that would naturally disappear without any foreboding injunctions or something like that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the feeling of your comments and your response. I was really flowing with that, and thank you. And I guess the one little afterthought about that is, I guess connecting it to kind of a medicinal aspect, though. I mean, for people in certain situations, you know, in that environment of like a Seder, you know, there's not indulgence of drinking, it's ordered, and it could seem to have medicinal value at that juncture in that time, place, and circumstance, but also just in that juncture of someone's spiritual evolution, to where it is just medicinal. It's
medicinal, yeah, and then and even in terms of physical medicine, then that's like a different category. That's a different category of regular principles. Even like
even like you talked about, you know, heroin as a you know, addiction that might be destroying somebody's life, but yet also opioids have value.
They have their medicinal value. Correct.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gajendra Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Kim.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the talk. One thing I struggle with all the time, I tend to go to this place. This isn't probably very useful. Like if I was God, I would do things differently. I would do things like this, you know? And one of the things that always throws me is why people are so flawed, why everybody in this material plane seems so flawed with so many qualities that aren't good. Because I always think, well, why wouldn't God just make everybody very, very good, very unflawed, perfect? If I was God, everybody would be perfect, I think, you know. And that always throws me. And then I always go back to, okay, it's free will. Well, it's because he gave us free will. And that's why this is. And it makes sense. But I still always go back to, but if I was God, I would make everybody perfect, have free will, and they still would be very good, and then they wouldn't want to do bad things. I just circle in that all the time, and it gets me, I don't know, depressed or confused or something. That's my question.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I hear that. Well, one thing, if I were Krishna, I would do it this way. And okay, right. And so, and in one sense, that's putting my intelligence above God's. But yeah, I have that tendency too, for sure. And well, okay, one thing, it could be perfect, but it might be perfectly boring. Well, what I mean is, like, no, like I don't see God as like malicious like that. But free will means that we could choose stupid. That's what it means. It means we can choose foolish. It means that we have that possibility. And for me, it's a helpful perspective that most spirit souls don't choose foolish. Right? The vast majority of spirit souls, they're serving Krishna with love and devotion. Even in Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan, they can choose to forget their relationship with Krishna. So that's what it means. Like, that's like, for me, that's a big part of the definition of self-determination or free will, that we can choose foolish, and a certain percentage of us do. And then at any moment, at each moment, we get to choose Krishna again. We get to choose our original consciousness of service to God. And so, yeah, I don't know if that satisfies your mind and intellect's propensity to go, well, I would do it different if I had that job. But because yeah, just the principle of like this free will is very important, right? Because without it, there's no love. And so like if we didn't have the choice to forget Krishna and to try to do my own God project, if we didn't have that choice, then it would be like we're like robots but there's not a lot of fun there. If I just build a robot who says, I love you, David, like that. But when someone voluntarily chooses to show affection, then that touches my heart. So that propensity comes from Krishna. And so a certain relatively small percentage, for some, really just an instant of eternal time, choose to forget. And then the choice is always, there's no eternal damnation. Those are some thoughts that come to me.
Yes, I agree. I forget about some of those, like the fact that it is just an instant in time.
Yeah.
And connection of love, that you need free will for love. What is the percentage? Is there an actual percentage of how many souls end up coming to the material world?
It's a different way. Sometimes we hear from Prabhupada like maybe 10%. Sometimes we hear like material world is like Ekapada Vibhuti, it's like 25% of creation. But that doesn't mean that it's 25% of the living entities who make that choice. It just might be 25% of the energy. So there's a lecture where Prabhupada indicates maybe 10%, but we need to keep in mind we're talking about infinity here, and so these are just to give us some idea, because we're talking about infinity here. So when we talk a percentage, it's just to give us some feeling that it's that most souls they don't make that foolish choice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Malini.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I just want to comment on the comment from Kim. And wanted things to be different than what they are.
Yeah.
Wanted reality to be different than what it is. Wanted Krishna's reality. I can relate to that. And I was thinking about the part where Kim, you said, like, why is Krishna not making us perfect? And he is. That's a far out thing, is that we are made at his image and we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we are perfect and complete unit. So and the evils that we bring on ourselves, the pain and the suffering we bring on ourselves, and the way we develop those tendencies is progressive. It's not like it's just building up little by little by little by little by little by little by little. And then we come to a place like our reality is to be born in Kali Yoga, in this age now, is where evil is so much developed. Like that. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks very much for that. I liked your response. That there's one of Prabhupada's small books is he entitled "The Path of Perfection." So it's just like, if we choose, yes, I'm eager to restore my original perfect nature, then here's a path that's given to us by Krishna through his disciplic succession. This is a path of perfection. Thank you, Melanie.
May I make a comment?
Yes, Gajendra.
So this, what Kim brought up is something that I've thought about for a long, long time, over and over, round and round. And I know it finally to me came down to, like, yeah, I get all that and free will and the possibility to make, but I was still saying, but still, we're all a part of God and I'm a part of God. And the fact that beyond the potential to make the wrong choice, so to speak, I'm actually making it. So that would seem to indicate a defect or a fault in reality, like there's something wrong. That was maybe my judgment with my higher intelligence. And where I finally moved away from that after being stuck with that judgment of defect for so long, is I realized in the kind of maybe achintya beta sense, the part of me as an individual to be absolutely, completely powerful, expansively, fully responsible for my experience, of how I view reality, how I see reality. That's where the sort of key was to get out of the door of getting stuck. It had to do with having a greater realization of my responsibility as an individual and stop trying to scapegoat that there's some problem because God is defective. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm moved by what you're saying. That kind of that theological apparent quandary, and that for you, that very alive principle of personal responsibility. Yeah, that's the powerful, inspiring, maybe uncomfortable resolution. I appreciate that. Like, because
I'm not a victim of reality, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm responsible, and so so between stimulus and response, there's a moment of choice, and what am I doing in that moment of choice? Krishna is saying to Arjuna, thanks for Rukmini's inspired by your perspective. Yeah, So because Krishna's saying to Arjuna, like, okay, you're a responsible, conscious entity. How do you choose? I've given wisdom. I've given you the sublime wisdom. What's your choice? And I'm not going to dumb you down. I'm not going to take away your choice. How do you choose? And with that responsibility, then there's like the potential for me to be the source of incredible fulfillment, and for me to be the source of incredible misery. And it's me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. This is Ladini.
Yes, Ladini.
Yeah, I'm also, of course, like thinking about this. Maybe not. And like what I'm thinking, like maybe the material world is like not the wrong place. like of course, you're frozen. Can you hear me?
I am hearing you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hare Krishna. So because like we read a lot about how miserable this material world is, and like it seems to me like it is maybe like a step one, like to get like, I don't want to live this material life because it's like so degrading, and so many people don't even realize that they are suffering. So that's quite ignorance, but I know many people who like don't admit even to themselves that they are suffering. And it seems that like a lot of this philosophy is about like, look, like this is suffering, like there is death at every corner and so much pain, so much misery. But then, so it's for us to like get like, let's try something different. But then it seems to me that at one point there is like seeing the perfection and completion in the creation, like it's not wrong. The material world is like when people do this responsible perspectives, there is like so much growth in all the victim stories.
Yeah.
And like that. And so, and also like when the pure devotees are praying for this Jame Jame Prabhu say, like serving Lord Krishna birth after birth, it doesn't seem that they want to get out of this place because it's like so horrible. So I'm just like thinking that like learning to see that this place is miserable, but also learning to see that this place is beautiful, hand in hand.
Thanks for that. Thank you. Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Yeah, this material world, it's also complete and perfect arrangement for our self-realization. I'm reminded, this is in the, it's in the book by Mukunda Swami, Miracle on 2nd Avenue. And there's 3 basic parts there: New York, San Francisco, and England. And in the San Francisco part, so Prabhupada comes in 67, and it's really the height of the hippie scene, Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco. And so Prabhupada was invited to give a talk at some program, like a sort of like at a hippie den. It wasn't one of the big hall sort of thing. I mean, that was also there in the San Francisco visit. So they were walking from their place on Frederick Street in Haight-Ashbury, and Mukunda was kind of guiding Prabhupada. And he described, it was like a night scene at that time, 67 San Francisco. And Mukunda was describing that like there was just like foul smells and people practically having sex right there on the street, and drugs, and just and those who are going like crazy tripping and drug experiences, very deranged and demented. And it was like the psychedelic scene. We can think of flower power, but like the way Mukund described it was like really the dark, seedy side, and they were walking through these streets. And Mukunda, he was feeling kind of bad, like, oh, I shouldn't be taking Swami here. I shouldn't be taking Swami here. And he describes it in the book that like it seemed that like Prabhupada read his mind, and Prabhupada just looked at the scene, and Prabhupada said, everything, he said, everything is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. And Mukunda took it as not just, that was Prabhupada's perception. Everything is beautiful. And Mukunda took it as a personal instruction, as like Prabhupada, because Mukunda was feeling disgusted at this whole thing, but he took it that Prabhupada was giving him a personal instruction to cultivate in a grounded way this vision. Everything is beautiful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you all. I appreciate your focus, intention, and your sincerity for honest self-realization. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you all.